Very interesting times we continue to be in, and I had a fascinating conversation yesterday with a senior leader, chief digital officer at a Fortune 50 company here in the US, and what his view and his thoughts on leadership as we're now post-pandemic. It's September of 2022, and how he's using the changes to his advantage were fantastic, right? Collaboration is important within my company, and so we want to bring people back to the office. And how we do that and how we incentivize people to go back to the office is really critical to organizational success, employee retention, and making sure that the employee continues to feel valued, right? Reality is, like it or not, that the employee has received a benefit from work from home, right? And depending on where you live, depending on how commutes happen, let's just say they got 45 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes in the afternoon. It's an hour and a half a day that they're not sitting in their car going back and forth to the office. And they've been productive, right? There are statistics out there that say we're more productive in that environment than we have been traditionally, and that is certainly debatable. But as I'm now trying to bring my organization back, leadership in that process is going to be critical. And it's changed the way we interview, right? As we're looking for candidates for executive level marketing, product, digital roles, that's a key component, right? How they view that shift and how they're envisioning the future of their workforce, right? And so we have a client, right, who's in the South, and 6 to 9 months ago, I get a call from the CMO. I've known the guy for 20 years, and he's pretty upset, right? He's like, hey, we are about to force everyone to go back to the office, and I'm concerned, what's that going to do to my team? And I said, you're about to see significant turnover, right? People are not going to be happy, especially if they're in digital. They're not going to be happy. So fast forward that, very heavy-handed approach. Everyone has to be back in the office on X date, and there's no exceptions, basically. Inside of 100 days, they lost 37% of their marketing team. And then hybrid became okay. So, that's not leadership, right? It shouldn't come to that in order for us to realize that that was a bad idea, that was bad policy, and that wasn't going to lead us down the path we want to go, right? And we're seeing it also geographically be difficult, right? So there are certain cities, I started to see it maybe 9 months ago in New York, where I was getting calls 2 to 3 a week from people living in New York. We're a certified woman-owned business, and a big part of what we do is make sure that there is both gender and ethnic diversity in each slate of candidates we present for our executive searches. And specifically what was interesting here was most of the time it was female candidates or female talent who were saying, I'm being asked to go back to the office in New York. I don't feel safe. Can you help me find something else that's either remote or I'm willing to relocate? And in about 6 months ago, I started to get those calls from San Francisco. And here in the last 30 days, it's been people from Chicago, and the CEO of McDonald's in Chicago came out and said that safety is a big issue for them being able to get people back into the office, right? There's also a recent survey out in New York, as they said, bring people back to the office, what are your concerns? 24% listed safety as their top concern. So I ultimately think that most organizations end up in a hybrid environment. And you're in the office 3 days a week, you work from home from 2, because as we get to that point, that collaboration is so important, right? And there is real value in that, and there is real opportunities that we've missed from that perspective during the pandemic. So I think that's pretty much a consensus among senior leaders, but then how I bring people back is really important, and how I engage with the younger generation to get them engaged, because they don't see it as necessary at all, right? I mean, if you're 22 to 32 and that's your generation, your thinking is, this work from home thing is good and I can just keep this, I don't see any value. And the difficulty in that is, the younger you are in your career, the more you need the training and the interaction, but yet we're not messaging that well, right? And so if I don't want to lose those people to other opportunities, I've got to be able to communicate that in a way that helps them understand the value. And then when they get to the office, they actually see that we're following through on that. So to go back, right, I had this conversation with this chief digital officer yesterday. And it was really interesting because we were talking about leadership, and I basically just asked him, because I know his organization is going back hybrid. And I said, how is that impacting your team? He said, honestly, it's really not. Right? He said, what's happened during the pandemic is I had some people on my team move, so they decided where they wanted to live, and they're high performers, so we're not going to change that. And whenever I had an opportunity to hire somebody, I just hired the best person I could, regardless of location. So I now have people in every time zone in the US, and what that's enabled me to do is change the workflow to optimize productivity. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. Share with me more. He said, look, I used to have everyone in the same time zone, and I had an 8-hour workday. Okay. I now have an 11-hour workday in the US, and because I have an 11-hour workday in the US, I'm able to look differently at how things get done. And we're always testing, we're always iterating, so there's things that break, there are things that need to be looked at and fixed. And I no longer have to ask someone on the East Coast to go in at 10 o'clock at night to fix something that's broken, because I've got somebody on the West Coast, right, it's still part of their normal workday. And 10 o'clock's obviously a little bit late. Let's call it 8 o'clock, right? So I've now got a better quality of life for my employees on the East Coast because I'm not asking them to work as much, and I'm able to manage what we do in a way that increases productivity. And then I have my QA people who are offshore. So in this 24-hour cycle, right, I'm able to get more work done because I'm planning the workflow in a way that leverages everybody's skills, but also leverages the time zone they're in. And I've got the same number of employees I did pre-pandemic. We're way more productive. And so, I thought that was fascinating. He's viewing the, remote environment. He's viewing the fact that people are in different time zones and factoring that into how he plans people's days, how he plans work, and how the work will flow through his department as a competitive advantage. That's leadership. That's how we need to be looking at taking this and saying, all right, the world's changed. Here's my landscape. What do I do to make sure that now, based on the investment the organization's making in me and my team, I'm maximizing success at the end of the day? While, the other thing that's really important in that is he was focused on quality of life for his team because he wants retention, right? And so retention of his A players is critical. And so how am I doing keeping their work-life balance positive? And at the end of the day, he had a real good lens on maximizing organizational productivity, therefore output, therefore profitability, with maximizing employee stakeholder quality of life. And it was a really smart way of looking at it.